Morning, everyone. Happy New Year. I promise this is the last time I'm going to say Happy New Year this year, although I have said that about 20 times already. So welcome to the first Esop Sofa of 2024. I'm Darren Smith of Global Shares, JP Morgan, and I'm your host for today's panel session. We can only do these webinars thanks to the generosity of our members and sponsors, so a huge thanks to all of them and for you for joining us today as well. Before we start, I'll do a little housekeeping. These sessions are always better with interactions from the audience, so please ask lots of questions to our amazing panel by going to the chat question box on the right-hand side of the screen, and I'll be able to pick those up. I'll leave about 15 minutes at the end of today to go through those. The webinar's been recorded and it'll be available to watch in 48 hours, so if you've not got enough of us live, you can watch it back and listen to all these amazing jokes and amazing people talk. On the agenda today is a review of 2023, engaging a diverse workforce and what to expect in 2024. I'm delighted to be joined by three great panelists today. Anyone who's joined me on the sofa before will know I get carried away with dad jokes and it can go a bad way. So I feel my first guest is a real positive sign, and I'm delighted to introduce Charles Goodway. Charles is head of deferred and executive compensation at Standard Chartered, giving insight from a truly global financial giant, which I know we're all banking on. I'm also joined by Jonathan Sturman, Executive Remuneration and Share Plan Manager at Kia Group. If Jonathan had £1 for every time someone thought that Kia Group was a car company, he would have a serious CGT bill. Kia is a British construction, services and property company, so I know Jonathan will lay the foundations today and help build an engaging conversation that will be plastered all over social media. And finally, Rebecca Perry, Managing Associate at Tapestry Compliance. Rebecca ran for Great Britain and was the third fastest female 100-metre sprinter that they have. So I'm looking forward to running through what to look out for in 2024 and also to jog our memories of 2023. That's the last of the puns, I promise. But thanks so much for joining us. A massive round of applause to this amazing panel. So let's dive straight into some questions. In previous years, the reviews of the sofa for the previous year has had things such as COVID, pandemic, cost of living crisis and war. But Rebecca, what's been the biggest impact on share plans in 2023?
Hi Darren, thank you for having me first of all, and hi everyone. So the impact of those things you've mentioned remain with us to a degree. So windfall gains as a topic last year was very much talked about, but in the end the IA didn't issue any red tops for this issue and companies seem to have managed the position. In terms of 2023 and what else has impacted share plans, there are a few things I could talk about here. So one, there's increasing importance around climate change and ESG. Two, the discussion around what is an employee or worker, as we've seen an explosion of PEOs and umbrella companies now using share plans. But the final thing I wanted to mention here was America. So this year in particular, we've seen the US reasserting its economic dominance and a widespread recognition that America deploys much more financial firepower in pay and reward levels and also achieves greater levels of growth. So the question for us is, what impact has this already had and what will it have on the global war for talent? And I think this is really one of, if not the key conversation in relation to share plans, at least at an exec level globally at the moment.
And what do you expect to see here in terms of changes, and why do you think the US is winning the war for talent?
Well, we're already seeing more around the fundamental question here, which is, have we, the UK, gone too far in controlling and limiting what we pay our leaders? In the UK, we've got more of an interventionist and activist philosophy where shareholders expect more control, more oversight when it comes to exec pay. And we're really seeing the volume being cranked up on the discussion around the UK approach to remuneration being too restrictive, in particular in relation to quantum. Contrasting this with the American experience, where there's much less activist shareholder base, the pay levels are significantly higher than in Europe and in particular the UK. So should and will we adopt a more free market approach? What needs to change to ensure we're winning that war for talent is really the key question. I think it's a really watch this space. Without getting too political, there's a possible new government this year. I'd expect this to be something that's addressed one way or another. There's obviously already, quite rightly, a lot of attention on achieving greater UK economic growth, and questions as to whether too much red tape is strangling business and competitiveness for the UK is key, really.
Brilliant. So Rebecca's given us loads of ideas there and examples. So please get your questions in later for Rebecca on those. We're going to move to Charles now. So before I ask you the same question, Charles, and the impact it's had on Standard Chartered, can you just give us a brief overview of the share plans that you offer to your employees first, please?
Yeah, Darren, no, good to be here. Yeah, in terms of the share plans that we offer to employees, we have essentially three main types. So we have an executive LTIP, which applies for our 2 executive directors and also for 11 members of our group management team. That LTIP has 3 performance conditions, so fairly in line with many others in the market. We have return on tangible equity, we have relative TSR, and we also have strategic measures in the mix there. Next, we have what we refer to as our deferred shares. So our deferred shares is our carve out for a bonus that applies for about 2,500 of our employees annually. And that's what we use to meet our regulatory requirements, but it's also a great tool for us to keep people invested in the business as well. And finally, we have an all-employee share save plan that we operate at a global level. That plan has been in place for about 30 years now, and it's still really well received. So looking across our offering, we have at least 20% of the global population enrolled in at least one offer.
That's brilliant, thanks. So in terms of, if we take a look at last year, what did it look like for Standard Chartered? Did you review your share plan offering at all, change anything, or see a change in participant behaviour or take-up?
Yeah, so in terms of review last year, we were looking at our all-employee plan. So as I said, that all-employee plan's been in place for a long time. It's quite unusual actually now to see a global share save plan, and we know that a lot of people in the market are doing share purchase these days. So we thought we'd dive into that and see whether it made sense to make some kind of change there. And actually, the more we got into it and looked at it, the more we are convinced that actually global share save works best for us, and I can explain the reasoning behind that. So the advantages of ShareSave come when you're offering in countries that you operate at a phantom level, because even if you can't offer the individuals real shares, you can still have them exposed to your share price and invested in what's happening with your share price through the savings contract that ShareSave offers. And to give you some numbers behind that, so of the 41 countries that we offered in last year, 12 of those are phantom countries. But more importantly, over 50% of our uptake was from individuals in phantom countries. So it is really significant for us. And that kind of was the real driver to thinking, actually, let's keep what we've got and see how we can make it better, essentially, rather than make a wholesale change. I can give you a few other stats behind our uptake just to get a bit of an insight into what it looks like. So last year's offer, we had 9.5% uptake at a global level. And that's up from around 6% a few years ago. We put that down to more positive sentiment towards Standard Chartered and obviously the knock-on effect that people are hoping that will have on our share price. And then to pick out a few examples there, UK, we had 20% uptake, but it's by no means our highest uptake. If you look at South Korea, we had 23% uptake, and in Bangladesh, we had a 32% uptake. And behind that, it's also worth noting that those are quite a lot bigger countries than the UK for us. So, you might expect because of the tax advantages in the UK that the UK would be highest, but that's really not been the case.
That's really interesting, and I know that many global companies, and Rebecca will have come across this with her clients as well, is really looking if ShareSave works for them or share purchase plan, and different things work for different people. So it's really good to review your plans, frequently to make sure it's doing the right thing for yourself. So no, thanks for that, Charles. Really, really interesting. And then I guess same question to you, Jonathan, but first of all, could you just give us an overview of your share plans as well, please?
Yeah, sure, Darren. I mean, we're UK based, obviously, unlike what Charles was talking about. So for our all employee offering, we have both ShareSave and SIP, and we've offered them both for a long time, and yeah, we get a pretty reasonable take up. So for example, in 2023, we saw an increased ShareSave take up to about 24% of our 10,000 or so employees joining, and then with SIP it hovers around about 20% or not, and yeah, and with SIP particularly, it tends to be fairly static. And then for our more senior population, we have an LTIP that's for our executive directors and sort of the top 60 or so strategic leaders. And then we also have a deferred bonus scheme for our executive directors and our executive committee. So there's sort of four different schemes running at any one time.
No, that's great. Thanks for that overview. And then in terms of like 2023, did you see a change in your offering at all, or the participant behaviour in terms of take up?
Yeah, we saw so we ShareSave, we saw a jump in take up, which is surprising because you're never quite sure, particularly with the cost of living crisis, how how people are going to react to the ShareSave invite. So I think, I mean, here we've got 10,000 odd employees, depending on which day you try and count heads, and yeah, it's a very diverse workforce. We've got people from one side doing sort of property development schemes through to we've got people that are fixing water pipes or mending potholes, all those sort of bits. So you've got a complete spectrum of people. But yeah, we saw a good jump in take up, and I think that hopefully was sort of in part because we were able to reintroduce the bonus on ShareSave, which I think was a big plus for people. Plus, I think maybe it gives a vote of confidence. Perhaps people can see that Keir's been through the mill for the last few years, but it's coming out the other side. So maybe they think there's some upside on the share price. And then on the exec schemes, we had our remuneration policy up for its triennial review at the AGM, and as part of that, we took the opportunity to tweak the LTIP performance conditions and add ESG in as a new target. So it's 10% of the overall weighting, and we picked sort of carbon reduction on the scope 1 and 2 basis. So again, that's something which I think the market was generally moving towards, and because we do a lot of infrastructure work, a lot of construction work, we are quite intensive in carbon use, so it is a critical measure for us in reducing it. So it seems sensible for the senior leaders to be part of the target for their payout is based on that reduction.
And was that well received, Jonathan? Obviously, it seems a real positive step.
Yeah, it was, and we talked to shareholders beforehand as part of the sort of obviously the policy renewal, and generally I think shareholders are quite supportive. Again, you get some shareholders that said you should go further, others that say, oh no, it should be financial only, but generally the consensus was that it was about right, and because we were able to demonstrate that the target would be it'd been set correctly, that it could be verified, and so on when it comes to measuring the outcome. I think we're on fairly solid ground with bringing that one in.
Brilliant. And if I can just get the number for you guys who work on potholing, that'd be great, just for end of my street. But yeah, we'll talk later on that one. Okay then. So that's 2020. That's 2023. As we've got two big all-employee plan issues on the sofa today, I'm sure our guests would love to know how you keep your participants engaged, increasing participation, but also educating them on vesting, maturity, etc. With the CGT and dividend limits reducing significantly. I'll go to Rebecca first, as I know you deal with lots of large global clients. What are the standout engagement ideas from your clients, Rebecca?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, possibly the most important question. And I am going to take it back to
all
basic
questions, Rebecca. They're all good questions.
Of course, Darren. I just want to take it back to basics here and say something that's obvious, but I really can't say it enough. Communication is critical when it comes to engagement. So you could have two identical plans and one not be effective or have comparable take up purely based on the communication strategies. And you've quite rightly touched on the tax angle here as well. So yes, you need to be clear on the tax impact of participation. And although you can't give investment advice, it's fine to provide information and also financial education as well. But for me, yeah, the key line is just that in addition to clarity on how the plan operates, it's imperative to align what you're trying to do as a business with what you want the actual plan to achieve. So aligning it with strategy, even as simple as saying that out loud when you're designing and conceptualizing the plan. The first question should be, what are you trying to achieve? And make sure you communicate that effectively.
No, that's spot on. And Charles, with you being a global company in so many jurisdictions, engagement must be a real challenge. How do you communicate to your plans to your employees?
Yeah, I think the strategy is really important, and you know, we have an overall strategy that's kind of stood the test of time, and employees people have been here for a long time expect it every year. So the main ways in which we engage are at the global level. We have so many countries that we're in that doing targeted by country is not realistic given the resources that we have. To Rebecca's point, every year we have a catch line to explain what the plan is. Sometimes that stays the same from year to year. Sometimes it changes just to mix things up a bit, and that will go on the front of our invitations. So we have the global invitation. We really tried to strip that back this year, actually. I think we reduced it by about 50%. It's now about 6 or 7 pages long. And one change we made for this year, which was really well received, was to include a couple of pages which look at employees' individual experiences from all around the world. So, you know, how have they engaged with the plan? What have they got out of engaging with the plan? And really making sure we have diverse representation there from all around our markets so that people can see people similar to them and what they've got out of it. And I think that's been an important part of our strategy this past year and really well received. Similarly, for our maturity guides, we just tried to strip them back. In terms of the detail, we have what we call country guides, which sit in the back, hidden away on a website, and you can go and seek out your own country guide to see, you know, what the details are around taxes, etc. So that's been our strategy, and it seems to have worked well, particularly the changes that we made this year.
Brilliant. And then obviously being global, is translation something you look at, or is it all English business talk?
The global communications are all English. Sometimes we will do targeted interventions at a country level. We didn't do any last year. That's normally if we've had a big market that's had a significant drop off, for example, and in those cases we might look at translating materials, but generally it's in English.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And then Jonathan, you know, I was lucky enough to work with you for a number of years when I was at YBS before they withdrew from the market. So I know how important engagement is to you and your employees. You also, a massive round of applause, standing ovation from the audience, won an Esop Centre award for use of technology last year. So have you made any significant changes in the last year or so post-COVID and cost of living crisis?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's all about comms. It's all about engagement. You know, and it's even from a wider benefits perspective, it's often employees don't know what's out there. Yeah, what's on offer, even if it's not of interest to them. Yeah, they need to know it's there. So particularly with ShareSave, yeah, it's refreshing your comms, looking at the engagement strategy. I mean, at Kia, you know, we've got a big chunk of the workforce, probably 40%, that are not online with a work email, so that, you know, they don't use a work email. So it makes it really difficult to use some of the normal sort of ways of communicating with them. So yeah, there's a lot of emphasis then around having the materials up on site, having what we call toolbox talks, where the foreman or the manager speak to groups of people, using the local HR teams to sort of spread the word and so on. I mean, what we have found is, we've got an app, a Share Plans app, which is getting really good take up because it's so easy to use that, once we get people signed up for it, and again, it's the barrier about getting people to sign up or getting it on their phone, getting them signed up. But once they're on there, then obviously we can use it to show them what they've got with ShareSave, where we can push notifications through again. But yeah, it's all around engagement, it's all around the comms to try and push it along.
Yeah, and I think when we were in the green room, because it was very professional and we've got a green room, when we were in the green room, you mentioned obviously CGT being an impact on maturity this year. Did you do anything different for that, for your employees?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we've got, because of COVID, we're out of sync with one of our maturity. So we've got a scheme that matures on the 1st of April. We're now starting to roll out the comms on that, but there will be a big push, to try and explain to people that there is a risk because both schemes are in the money. So there is a risk that if they delay on the maturity of the one on the 1st of April, and so it falls into the next tax year, we're going to have two maturities in the same tax year, and as it stands, people could potentially fall foul of the reduction in the CGT allowance. But that's quite a tricky position to talk to people about because we sell ShareSave on the fact that it's easy peasy, very easy to understand, very easy at maturity. And then suddenly if we're starting to say to people, well, actually there's this issue around tax and you might want to think about using an ISA or doing something else, it kind of, it dilutes the, I suppose, perhaps the simpleness of the sell for ShareSave. So it is a big concern, and something that we're working through. And again, it's the problem is you can't sit down and talk to people when you've got that many people. So it's going to be a challenge for this year, I think.
What I would say is I'm sure all of us on this panel would love to have the problem of having to pay CGT. It means they're making money. So it's always, I always tell it as a real positive. And obviously we've talked a lot there about all employee. I'm just interested to ask, is there anything you do financial education wise for execs, Charles or Jonathan, in terms of obviously the exec might be unbelievable running a team of 1,000, but actually when it comes to the finances and share plans, they might know nothing. So Charles, is there anything you do at all for your, and sorry, I've not asked you this prior to this, so we'll see what the answer is.
It's quite bespoke, really, and it depends on the executive. So we don't have a program or anything like that. We just try and keep things as straightforward as possible for them. We make things as easy as possible. So if something needs to be done on an application and they go in and they're struggling with it, we might sit down with them and help them do it. For people who want to understand how their share plans work more, we would do a session on that for them, or this is for those who actually want to go in and use our shares portal. We would sit down and show them how to use it. So it's very bespoke. There's no particular training program. It's really sort of demand led.
Brilliant. And then just quickly to you, Jonathan, as well, is there anything you do over and above?
Yeah, so we do a guide. So we do a guide at awards and a sort of a guide at vesting, just to give a breakdown of, like you say, how it works. Because like you say, it's particularly LTIPs can be quite complicated, and we net settle all our awards as well, which obviously adds an extra layer of complication when we try and explain it. So so we do some guidance which sort of breaks down how it works, how the tax calculated, CGT, that sort of stuff. But we don't do anything. We don't do anything sort of other than that at the moment. But it it's a fair challenge actually, because it's it can be quite big numbers for some people, isn't it?
Brilliant. And thanks to Danny and Maria who have started sending questions in. Feel free to ask more questions, everyone. I must admit, Jonathan, I've been looking at you with your award now for the last 10 minutes, so I'll try and move on quickly. No, I'm only joking. So let's move on to call for evidence. You know, we're waiting for an outcome on the call for evidence, you know, which the Esop Centre submitted a response along with a number of advisors, providers and issuers. I know this has been discussed on previous sofas, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'd love to know what one thing you all would love as a result of the review. So I'll go to you first, Jonathan. What would you love if you had a magic wand?
Yeah, I think for me it's the SIP. It's the 5 years. You know, when we talk to people about SIP and we say, oh yeah, and you got a whole 5 years to get them tax free, people instantly they're like, no, 5 years way too long. And then actually it turns out they'll probably be here for more than 5 years, but and they regret that decision. But for me, 5 years is out of kilter with everything else that we do. And 3 years share save, I mean that's pushing it, but people tend to think actually 3 years isn't that far away. But when you say 5, it I think that dissuades a lot of people from even thinking about it.
Brilliant. And so to you, Charles.
Apologies. Sorry, your question just came up. Remind me what the question was. So
the question is, call for evidence. What one thing would you like for the HMRC to bring in?
Yeah. So thank you. I think so. Obviously, I'm thinking about it from a share save perspective, and when I think about that, it's really the lever provisions. So I think the lever provisions were put in at a time where share save was potentially seen as a retention tool, and I think for a lot of companies, if not the vast majority of companies, share save is not a retention tool anymore. It's around aligning interests of employees with what you're doing at the company. And so for me, if the lever provisions allowed for all employees when they're leaving, assuming it's just a normal resignation, that they could exercise their savings up to the date of leaving, I think that would be great. The reason I say that is because the amount of time people stay in roles has changed a lot. People move roles a lot these days, and they often come back to the same company. And if you can give somebody a good leaving experience, I think it improves the chances that they'll come back to your company, bringing with them skills and experience that they've gained elsewhere.
That's a great shout, and it also takes away then the question around term on share save. So you don't have to reduce the term, because even if you leave due to resignation, you get your bad leaver. So you get your exercise allowed. And then Jonathan, just to play devil's advocate, I know we talked about this on SIP. Would it work?
Yeah, I'm not as sympathetic, I think, as Charles. Believers, I think it is a retention tool, and SIP's more difficult, and I think it's one of those things where I'm probably reasonably happy with how it stands at the moment. What is interesting is, I mean, with SIP, the good lever provisions are extremely generous, isn't it? That everything gets released tax-free, and the 5-year waiting period obviously gets waived, and we do see people that if they know there's a redundancy coming down the track, or they're on a longer notice period, they'll try and max out to try and make the best that they can from SIP. So I'm reasonably happy with what they are at the moment.
Yeah, I think I agree with Charles. I think the share save brilliant. It then gets that term gone, so the millennials who we know don't stay in role as long would definitely be a benefit there. So no, thanks to both of you there. And then Rebecca, you've got a magic wand. What are you going for?
If only we did have that. Well, we're in complete agreement that the reduction in time individuals have to wait to receive the tax treatment is priority, and we've also asked for this. There are a few other high priority changes we want to see. Maybe another interesting one to mention is the overall improvement in tax treatment. So SIP is overcomplicated. SAYE has unintended CGT issues. As Jonathan touched on earlier, the reduction of CGT and dividend tax allowance has added to this. And so what have we asked for? We've asked for the tax treatment for all types of SIP shares to be made the same, to exempt dividend shares from tax, or failing that, allow it to be paid through PAYE, and to exempt SAYE shares from CGT, or allow the CGT base to be reset to the market value of the shares at the point of exercise. Now, in terms of, well, what does HMRC think about that? We haven't discussed it directly, but they're likely to be wary of any improvement of the tax position. We know the Esop Centre wrote directly to the Chancellor on the SAYE point, so it is an important one in the market. So it will hopefully be considered. And I think earlier you asked for thoughts on timings as well, and that's unclear at the moment. There was some thought that this would be out by November last year, but clearly that hasn't materialised. There is pressure on the government to look at this, and we know ProShare are continuing to lobby the government, including that letter they sent in November, but it's probably unlikely to be a priority for the government at the moment, given the current political climate. We haven't heard anything concrete in terms of timing, but we don't expect any legislation before 2025 probably, so there might be some waiting before any of that comes into effect.
Right, 2025. Okay, right. I would. I'm remaining optimistic and positive that it's going to be an amazing change. But let's watch this space. Okay, then. Last question before I open it out to the audience questions is just let's be Mystic Meg and what we've got to look out for in 2024. Rebecca, do you want to give us a quick overview of what you think might happen in 24?
Not too much, I don't think. I think we'll see a steady state of affairs this year. Don't expect any big ticket announcements for several reasons. So one, from an all-employee perspective, I think we'll have to wait for the outcomes of the call for evidence, and again, maybe until 2025 when that actually takes effect. At an exec level, I think there won't be much change either. We're well into January, and it's probably unfair, I think we'll all agree, to the many companies now prepping their REM reports and policies if there were big changes this year announced by the IA. Secondly, the FRC have said to expect only minor amendments to the corporate governance code now, so a change on what we were expecting previously, and to expect those changes in January, but still no sign yet. Other reasons I don't think we'll see changes this year. In the UK, we can assume there's going to be a general election, which will result in a degree of regulatory inertia, at least in the first half of the year. And the other reason is connected to my very first point. So there's finally this widespread realization that the UK economy is under-competitive from a global perspective. And like I said at the start, a key narrative is that the UK is losing the war for talent to America. There's been lots of talk by this government and by the opposition about achieving better economic growth. And I think as part of this, there's been a recognition that the UK and Europe have reached a high watermark in terms of regulatory approach to governance and remuneration. We've seen CMIT's requests in issuing a letter for calling for a reduction in remuneration regulation, as well as much more simplified governance framework. And then entirely coincidentally as well, we've seen the government shelve certain draft reporting regulations. Now, that those weren't directly related to our world of incentives, but I think that the withdrawal of these regs indicate that the government is listening to the argument that we have enough remuneration regulations. So longer term, I'm not saying we'll see the end of regulation, but I think we might see the pendulum swing the other way, further from the current watermark, at least over the next 12 months, and maybe greater permissiveness, a lighter regulatory regime, more latitude for REM committees to choose their own remuneration framework that's perhaps more appropriate for their companies, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. And this will be most obviously reflected in award sizes. So to really short, I think any changes will happen next year, and we'll see quite a lot happening then, but not so much this year.
So nothing's happening this year, is what we're taking from that? I'm only joking. That's brilliant. Thank you, Rebecca. Perfect. Right, well, I'm going to go to a question now because we've got 10 minutes left, so I want to open it out. So please do get your questions in. So I'm going to read this. This one's from Danny Curran, so thank you, Danny. Companies talk a lot about comms, but some only do this at the launch. So do the panel feel an all year round strategy is relevant, key For example, do you feel following up after a launch with employees to find out why they did or did not join in the plan is important, or for any other good ideas? So I'm going to go to Jonathan.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we have a program of comms around our entire reward offering, all the reward and all the benefits. So we go out and we do a lot of sort of road shows and stuff like that. And as part of that, we feature share, save, and SIP, and we talk to people about even we might say, look, the share, save invites still 9 months away or whatever, but this is how it works and everything else. So we don't tend to go out immediately afterwards and say, why did you not join? But as part of a sort of a rolling comms program, we'll pick up the share plans or SIP and share save to be more accurate throughout the year. We also are quite conscious that there's quite a lot of confusion between SIP and share save employees. So when we do the comms around those two share plans, we try and keep them as far apart as we can time wise to avoid to avoid any confusion.
Yeah, you're right. You've got the battle, haven't you, for all the different benefits. So I know I say it often, but one of the good things I saw was that actually having a benefit of the month really, can help. So for you, SIP might be March, so that people get in the last one before the tax year starts, and then invest in the new one, and new tax year, and then share save. If I remember right, it was around October time, so you go back that way. So no, that's really good.
Yeah.
And then Charles, is there anything there around an all year round strategy that you look at?
No, we try not to overload people with information too much. So we just have our invitation and our maturity comms, and we don't have much of an around communication on this. I think people get enough on so many different things now. We're quite mindful of what we're putting in people's inboxes.
Brilliant. No, makes sense. Thanks for that, Charles. Okay, so now I want to go to Murray's question. So it's regarding Rebecca's opening comments on the median FTSE 100 CEO pay, excluding pensions, currently stands at 3.81 million. Now, our panel won't get out of bed for less than that, so 3.81 million apparently is the median. 109 times the median full-time workers' pay of around 35 grand. This represents a 9.5% increase on median CEO pay levels as of March 23, while the median worker pay has increased by 6%. How can further big increases for top executives be justified? Doesn't it run the risk of a return to fat cat headlines in the papers and alienated workforce? Go for that one, Rebecca.
Thanks, Murray. Yes, well, they earn a lot. The difficult answer is that they earn more in the US. So we have clients when it's been simply a case of they're unable to compete. And when it comes to the US, this is the big issue, is that we have a collision of philosophy. We've got this UK and European more socialist approach to pay to ensure it's not out of step and disproportionate in relation to the general employee pay. And then this more free market approach in the US. So there might be other factors as to why the US is showing high rates of growth. And the UK is not as much, but this is a potential reason, and so it just needs to be considered. But I do agree with you that it's a difficult one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rebecca. We've also got one here from Robert. Thank you very much, Robert Pay. The average total proportion of equity in share schemes is circa 1 to 2%. If plans are engines for engagement and productivity, why do so few businesses not have more in their share schemes? Would anyone like to take that one? Don't be shy.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, it's interesting when we look at our top shareholders in Kia. Our SIP trust and our employee benefit trust that holds shares to satisfy LTIP, I think it sits at about number 4 or 5. So there's a big chunk of our shares that do sit in the EBTs, and it's interesting when we come to voting at AGM, for example. Obviously, for those shares that we've got that we've we've funded the trust to market purchase for future maturities. Obviously, they can't be voted on, but we do push, we do push out to the our SIP participants to say that actually, SIP, you hold about 5% of key shares in the SIP trust. So actually, if you could all vote, that would be that would be really helpful. They don't all vote in favour, which isn't that helpful, but it's something that we do. So so we do see a big chunk of our share, which is quite good.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Jonathan. So we've got about 4 minutes left. So I am going to throw out to you a question, if you can answer it within 30 seconds, let's say. So what is your biggest challenge? So I'll go to Charles first. What's, in terms of share plans, what's your biggest challenge maybe in 2024 or in share plans in general?
I think generally our biggest challenge from year to year is operating in so many countries. So we operate in 60 different countries. Some of those are legacy, but at least sort of 50 odd are current. And for each country, you've obviously got securities laws, you've got tax legislation, and in some of those countries, you've also got exchange controls. You need to keep up to date and keep your plans operating effectively and within the confines of those requirements every year. And that's a huge amount of change to work through every single year. So I would say that's an ongoing issue that we need to work through all the time, and outweighs everything else, I would say, in terms of time commitment.
No, brilliant, thank you. And same question to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, for this year, I mean, it's CGT's immediate issue, because we say we've got 2 share plans that are almost in the same tax year. They're both in the money, which is great, and I think that will help push ShareSave ahead, because it'll be a good news story, and we've got a big part of people that that will be making some money for, first time for a long time out of ShareSave. And the other point is around engagement. We do look at our, for example, ShareSave take up to see, we can see the areas of the business where the take up is poor, and it's and it's ones that don't come as a great they don't come as a great shock, because there are areas of the business where you have perhaps staff who have been more affected by perhaps cost of living crisis than others, and so on, and perhaps there's a generally lower level of engagement with the business as such. So it's really, how do we get in to those areas to talk to them and say, actually, these share plans, particularly ShareSave, it's a really, really good, a really good plan.
Brilliant. Just to finish off, Jennifer Rudman, thank you so much. She sent us a question. Comms are important. With the annual dividend allowance reducing to £500 from April, should employees with shares SIPs be given some more information? It's something we're seeing a lot of discussions around. I'll answer that nice and quickly. Yes, the more information, the better in education, to see how we can support them with that. So all that's left for me to do is, first of all, thank these wonderful panelists. Thank you so much for your time. You've been absolute legends as always. And if there's any follow-up questions, send them over to us, please. Thanks you for joining us, and also a massive thank you to all the sponsors and members to make this happen for us today. There's lots of information on the Esop Centre website. You can see the Newspad and catch up on all things and upcoming events. So thank you so much for joining us. We do these about every 4 months, so if you want to be on my panel, give me a shout, and have a wonderful year. Thank you ever so much for joining us. See you later, everyone.